Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
You want a quality education that will give you a skill set that will make you marketable for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach from Metro Atlanta.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent, also from Atlanta, currently in North Carolina.
And I'm David Williams, and I'm a dad from Chicago, Illinois.
This week in the news, a great article by Michael T. Nietzel of Forbes. New evidence documents that a college degree pays off by a lot. Mark and Anika will discuss Chapter 125. Why are federal loans better than private school loans? Our bonus content is Mark discussing how students can use LinkedIn to do research on which colleges employers are hiring from. Our interview is part 2 with Vanessa Didyk, the CEO of Zeemee, on how Zeemee can help high school students get introduced into college communities. And our college spotlight is Rose Hulman Institute of Technology in the backyard of Chicago, Illinois. It's in Terre, Haute, Indiana.
Friends, very, very exciting announcements I've got to share with you today. Let me start by saying that special thanks to everybody who completed our survey most recently. Really been looking at these surveys and really gleaned some insights into them. So one of the things that they're revealing is that your favorite guests are our senior admissions officers. And so we're going to honor that and make sure that more than half of our guests moving forward will be senior admissions officers right from various schools around the country. Now, we're still going to have the test prep pros, the financial aid people, students, and people like Career Center people, and great guests we have like Vanessa Didyk now from companies like Zeemee. We're still going to have them, and you guys did say you like that as well. But you can expect more than half of our guests moving forward to be senior level admissions officers. And it's just an example of how this is not just our podcast, it's all of our listening families' podcasts. And by you speaking up, we are making some adjustments. Another announcement. So we asked you about 4 weeks ago, we asked you for your feedback. We said we are considering adding complete transcripts of every episode to our website. And if that's something that would be helpful, would you let us know? Well, thank you so much. Every single person who sent us an email at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com, 100% of the responses said this would be very helpful. And because of that, we went forward and moved ahead and said, we're going to start transcripts, starting with episode 123. And then some others of you stepped up and gave some really nice donations. And it gave us enough resources to talk to the company who's doing this and our webmaster and say, can you go all the way back to episode 1? And so I'm here to announce, if you go to yourcollegeboundkid.com right now, you will see a transcripts tab right by the episode tab. And if you click on the transcript tab for any episode, let's just say you want to do the most recent one, you're going to see the entire transcript with timestamps. And you'll have several options. You'll see a share icon if you want to share the transcript with somebody, a download option if you want to download it, or there's a link to Apple Podcasts if you want to go right there and play it. And then you'll see, my favorite, a magnifying glass. And if you use this magnifying glass to search for any word, say you search for the word loan, it's going to pull up every single time in that episode the word loan was used. The word will be highlighted and there'll be a timestamp.
Ooh.
And then if you click on the highlighted word loan in yellow, the podcast player will start playing right from that point in the podcast. So super excited about this feature. It's now up for every one of our episodes. I do have to say the transcript is about 90% accurate, so you can expect some spelling errors and errors in translation from voice to print. But what do you think, Dave, about this new service we're able to offer?
Oh, absolutely outstanding. I mean, the pace of technology is truly amazing. The fact that you can take 125 podcasts and digitize it and use it as a great resource, especially things like the College Spotlight, I think is just a great, great resource going forward. So well done.
Yeah, so take advantage of it. One of the challenge to everybody is go to yourcollegeboundkid.com sometime this week. Click the transcript tab and fool around with this. Now, we'll put those instructions in the show notes of every single episode. So you don't have to worry about going back and trying to, re-record or listen to what I just said. We'll make sure every one of our show notes has these instructions in it. I also want to share a very profound conversation I had with Sam Prouty, Director of Admission at Middlebury. Sam and I spoke for about an hour this week, and he said something that was eye-popping. And as soon as he said it, I said, Sam, can I share this with our audience? Can I quote you? And he said, sure, just make sure you tell them this is not Middlebury's view. This is my view. So Sam and I got into this, really long conversation about all the schools going test optional. Entire NESCAC conference has gone test optional now, half the Ivy League, so many more schools across the country. And I said, Sam, how many of these schools that have gone test optional for 1 year, in the case of Middlebury, 1 year experiment, 2 and 3 year schools like the Tufts or the Davidsons, a lot of other schools doing a 2 and 3 year, Haverford, another one. How many of the schools that are going test optional do you feel will continue to be test optional? And Dave, you know what he said to me? He took me back a while.
Probably said 100%.
He said, do you remember the old rotary phone that we used to have? Remember those old rotary phones with the holes in them?
Yeah. Yeah, I got you.
He said, I think every one of these schools that's gone test optional to go back to test would be like to go back to the rotary phone.
Oh,
so that was deep. That was deep. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Deep story there.
We've reached an inflection point. We've truly reached an inflection point, and I think that it's not just the tests. What's going on with the protests is just highlighting so many inequities in our society that the colleges have to be on the vanguard of addressing things. And I think the tests have come to represent so much that is negative that even though there's much that is positive, I agree there's no going back.
Well, what schools are going to find out is what Bowdoin's known for 52 years, Bates now for almost 40 years, that they can make great decisions without the tests.
Right.
Not to say that tests were not helpful in certain instances, but there's other ways they can get the information.
Yeah.
And I think that's there's no question in my mind, because over the years, I've had conversations with the George Washingtons and the Wake Forest and different schools that have gone test optional. And they overwhelmingly have said, it's working out extremely well. We're able to find the right kids. We have enough information in the file to make, the right decisions. They're graduating at the same rate. The retention's the same rate. The GPAs are the same between our test submitters and our non-test submitters. And that's what's going to happen. There's no question in my mind. So just keep an eye on that.
Right.
And I have one more super big announcement. Go ahead. You want to say something, Dave?
Yes, but just a reminder that doesn't mean that testing itself isn't going to go away for scholarships. These tests, I believe, will continue to be used as an adjunct. And kids, remember, once you get into college, LSATs, GMATs, MCATs, counting exams are still going to be part of the future. So this is not an excuse not to master the skill set of testing if it is in your ability to do so.
No, I'm really glad you added that. I mean, Dave, for our people who don't listen to every episode, we did a whole 20, 30-minute segment on test optional does not mean test blind.
Right.
We did that, right? And we're not backing up anything we said there. We agree 100%. Right. And definitely for scholarships, we're a long ways away from tests not being used for scholarship money. Mm-hmm. I can, show you that. So one other exciting thing I want to announce with you today, friends, and this is something we're going to try, and I have a really good feeling it's going to work out well. So I mentioned you're going to be bringing a lot of senior level people to you guys in terms of admission directors and high level senior people. And I was talking with one of them. I'll mention the name right now just because we're on it. And so SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, we're going to have their director of admission coming up not too long from now on the podcast. And I said, I have an idea, Laura. Why don't we try something? Why don't we have a special invitation at the end of your 3 or 4 part interview, whatever it ends up being, just to do like a Zoom video session with any of our listeners that want to ask follow-up questions to you. And this is everybody. This can be students. This can be parents. This can be our college counselors, our CBO counselors, our private independent counselors. How about we have a private, hour question and answer with you? She's like, fantastic. Let's do it. So we're going to do this. And so I'll be announcing the date well in advance. Really want to encourage you to sign up for that if you have any interest at all in learning more about Savannah College of Art and Design, one of the leading art and design colleges in the country. to attend that, because if this is something that gets a good attendance, I'll set this up with most of the admission directors and senior level people, because they love talking to students and parents. And everybody I talk to now is saying we've got to use technology and be more creative in this technological world and admissions.
Yep.
I'm consistently hearing from people like, we got to up our technology game. So this is very easy for me to get a commitment, and I think it's something that you will enjoy. You'll be able to talk one-on-one, have your own private information session. What are your thoughts, Dave?
I think that's amazing. It sounds like a great thing to do, and a great thing to expand other programs. So it sounds exciting.
Okay, friends, and for our admissions tip is actually related to holistic admissions. But I'm going to reverse it, and I'm going to give you the admissions vernacular first, which is holistic admissions. Any stab at a guess on that one, Dave?
Well, it comes from the word holistic, which means looking at things in a holistic manner. No, it means looking at things not in a narrow way, in a broad way, taking a very comprehensive approach.
Exactly. So holistic admissions really is the opposite of admissions by the numbers, which means that you are evaluating people by a range of different sources other than just their stats, and you're getting to know them as a person. And so that's holistic admissions. And so that's a broad definition. I did a workshop for Revolution Prep. You can check that out if you go to Revolution Prep webinars. And I went into over 50 different criteria that can be used in holistic admissions. So that's the broad vernacular. And you'll hear that term used so much. In fact, one of my pet peeves is this word is overused.
Yes.
And that's my tip. My tip is not everybody means the same thing when they say the word holistic admissions. In fact, everybody likes to say they're to use holistic admissions for two reasons. One, think about the opposite. Nobody wants to tell a kid, I judge you and I evaluate you by your numbers. You're a number to me, dude. Like, nobody kind of really wants that. So nobody likes to say that. Secondly, all the prestigious schools, I'll use holistic admissions. So people want to be able to kind of be in that club of how the most selective schools evaluate it. So as a result of that, everybody likes to throw that term around. So what I want you to do when you hear someone say we use holistic admission, because you're going to hear it over and over and over when you attend information sessions or talk to reps, or on tour, or you're on tour. And I want you to push back and say, well, how will you be evaluating me? What criteria will you use other than my numbers? That's the question you want to ask. Last week when we looked at Union, they are very much doing holistic admission. You can see anytime a school puts a big emphasis on an interview, they're trying to get to know every aspect of your personality and include that in their decision. So that's the tip. When you hear holistic, just understand it's been an overused, trite word. It doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. You push back and you ask, what do you mean by that? And how will you be evaluating my application other than my numbers? Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
Great article this week by Michael T. Nietzel of Forbes. New evidence documents that a college degree pays off by a lot. So this article was based on information by the College Board. They published an article, Education Pays 2019, the benefits of higher education for individuals and society. And it documented the differences in earnings and employment status for U.S. adults with different levels of education, and also looked at the links between education and a variety of personal and societal indicators, such as health-related behaviors, reliance on public assistance programs, and civic participation. So I'm going to throw a couple things out and get your feedback, Mark. The first thing they talked about was earnings. They said that the average median high schooler, adult with a high school degree, earns about $40,500. But if you have an associate's, it goes to $52,000. If you have a bachelor's, it goes above $65,000. If you have a master's, it goes above $80,000, a doctorate, $100,000, and a professional degree over $120,000. Did those statistics surprise you, Mark?
Well, great question, Dave. And before I answer that, I just wanted to just create the subtext. So, we know last week's article about public colleges are ceasing to be public now and the privatization of public colleges and a lot of stuff we've been talking about COVID-19 and student loans, and it's still on the negative side. This is a positive article.
Right.
And Dave and I felt like, let's bring some really good news, because college has been under assault recently. And we just felt it was time to have a very affirmative but truthful conversation about college.
Yeah.
And I would actually like to start by reading how they ended, because I think this sets the context.
Right.
And so this is how the article ends. And then I'll kind of get into your question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So it says, the past decade has seen the emergence of a cottage industry of pundits who question the economic value and the overall benefits of a college education. This group ranges in attitude from criticism to skepticism to cynicism. Several raise legitimate questions about whether college is adequately preparing college graduates for productive careers and meaningful lives. Some object to the increasing cost of college in light of the booming student loan debt and swelling operating budgets at many institutions. Both of these perspectives are justified critiques of higher education today, and higher education leaders who ignore them deserve to be taken to task. So I thought that was really balanced. But then it says, and this is the other part, and leads to our article, it says, but a few of the new pundit class appear to argue that a college degree is just not worth it, and that many students would be better off forgoing it altogether or substituting short-term industry recognized certificates for traditional four-year degrees. That's the context for the article. Is college is under assault, and its actual value, both financial and other values, are not being articulated in a cogent, compelling, persuasive way with data. And that's what this article does. So that was just a little preamble, Dave. I know it took a long time to get to your question.
Well, no, I thought that was excellent. You actually were going to bring up a point that I was going to conclude on, but let's dive into it more, because I actually think, because that article goes on to conclude that the rise of college is not for every crowd also happens to be at a time that more minority and first generation college students are enrolling. And he says, interesting and unfortunate. And he concludes, the newest Education Pays report confronts these college naysayers with a very stubborn and robust fact. The economic benefits of a college education remain numerous, substantial, and durable. And the reason I want, we can't escape that there's a political dimension to this, Mark, that we already talked about the fact that in some areas of the country, particularly red states, the appreciation of a college degree has gone down to less than 40% of the population, where it was like 80% just several decades ago. And there seems to be a poo-pooing of the intelligentsia, the intellectual class, as if there is some sort of negative political dimension to education and higher intelligence that does not pay off in a real world sense. And I think it's important to bring that out, because this article is really about rebutting a lot of those assertions.
Yeah, and it does it with data. So those numbers were around 71% having a favorable view of college, down to about fully 30 points, but varying significantly depending on political affiliation. So here's the data, and it's compelling. So if you take a high school graduate, median earnings 2018, $40,500. Okay, bachelor's, an extra $25,000. But I ran the math, so 24.9 to be precise.
Right.
So let's assume somebody works from age 22 to 65. That's 43 years.
Yeah.
Okay, that's $1,070,000 difference. Now let's go up to masters. Difference here is almost $40,000. $39,700 difference. $80,200 to $40,500. Let's assume you get your master's at 24, you got your bachelor's at 22, did a 2-year master's 24. So let's say you work until, once again, 65. That's 41 years of work. $1.67 million difference. Doctorate, now with doctorate, the difference is $80,000. I'm sorry, doctorate, the difference is $61,800. So let's say you got your doctorate by 26. That's a $2.41 million difference, and over the course of your lifetime. And professional degree, that's the $80,000 difference. Literally $120,500 compared to $40,500. Yeah. $80,000 difference, times that by 39 years of work, and we're talking over $3 million. So just in pure money terms, it pays for itself. Now, they show in the article, they say that take a student that had to pay for everything by loans, and it still would be worth it because by age 33, they would have recouped that difference.
Yep.
And so I just think that's really good because it's data, and you can see the more education, the higher pay. And then the other thing they go on and they talk about the percentage of people that make $100,000 or more by income level.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a high school degree only, 5% of those people make $100,000. If you have an associate's degree, 10% do. If you have a bachelor's degree, 28% do. If you have an advanced degree, 43% do. So in each case, more education is correlated with better income. Now, the one thing I think we should also talk about, Dave, a couple things that are in the article, and I think they're important. They do talk about the difference in earnings related to your major.
Yes, they said the median earnings for early career bachelor degree recipients range from $32,000 a year for early childhood education majors to $62,000 a year for computer science majors. So there is a breakdown of earnings based on, of course, some of the degrees, and not surprisingly, the degrees that are more technically oriented, computer science, tend to have a higher rate of return. What are your thoughts about that, Mark?
Yeah, well, I have several thoughts.
Yeah.
One is I do think it's important. I think it would be imprecise and inaccurate for us just to say any college degree guarantees you six-figure income.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily do that. And so I think it is important that we have that level of precision, that level of nuance to this conversation. Right. The article goes on to say an early childhood education major compared to computer science major, mid-level career, the difference is $41,000 compared to $95,000. That's a $54,000 per year difference in income. Both have degrees. So I think that's just important just for us, for clarity's sake, to get that out there for accuracy's sake. But the other thing that's important, and I don't want to give this impression, I think you very much could get this impression, we're not of the belief it's all about money. It's not all about money. Like, life is about personal happiness and fulfillment and doing what you love. And so that's also important. And I certainly would never tell everybody, pick a career where you make the most money. Like, that's one component of living, but it's not the only component of living. And so we're not here to say that you should just pick your major based on money. Like, everybody has to figure out for themselves how important money is to them, how much money they need to be happy and be satisfied. Other factors can come into play, such as, is there a spouse? What are their earnings like? What's the cost of living in your area? Are you bent to more frugality? Are you like Dr. Lincoln Penny over here? Push Lincoln off the penny, man. You can make it by bumming off other people on their meals on travel trips, man. Right. Did you inherit any money? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into how much money each person feels they need to make to be personally happy. And that's beyond the scope of this podcast. That's just something each person has to figure out. But I think it's important that we don't give the impression that we think that you should just strictly pick a career off where you'll make the most money. Any thoughts, Dave?
Well, that is correct.
Another thing that's important this article brings up is there's some other both economic and non-economic benefits that accrue to those who have higher levels of education.
Yeah.
And so a few of the other economic benefits other than salary are people with higher level of education tend to get in better jobs and therefore have better retirement plans.
Right.
So you get the better TIA CREF match or the 401k match, or you get a pension or something like that. Secondly, they also have better employer covered health insurance.
Yeah.
So all these things then end up having health and financial benefits. So you can't just strictly assess the benefits of education just by looking at salary compared to salary. And then it mentions some of the non-economic benefits that college graduates have. You want to comment on those, Dave?
Yes. I mean, they talked about that people with higher education tend to exercise more. They tend to smoke less. Their kids are better educated. They volunteer in their community more, and they tend to vote more and be more civically minded and participate.
Yeah, and I just felt like an affirmative defense of the value of college is something we need to have on this podcast, because it's been a while since we've had an article like this that presents that. I mean, there's a lot of benefits we talked about. significant earnings increase, going up to over $3 million on average for someone with a professional degree.
Yep.
To $1 million with a bachelor's degree. We talked about other economic benefits, pensions, healthcare plans, things like that. And then, I guess we should comment a little bit on some of these non-economic benefits. Dave, what's your theory on why college graduates would exercise more vigorously, more likely, be less likely to smoke, and more likely to have their kids engage in a variety of activities? Any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think you're introduced into a different milieu, a different culture, and so to speak, where exercising and health and smoking less and civic participation just have more value among the cohort of people you're going to be in. I mean, if you're working in a factory versus working on Wall Street, there is a thinking difference among all those parameters that will affect you. And then the other factor is the more money you make, the more money you can set aside, not just for leisure time, but to bring in different things that can help you with that leisure. You can join sports clubs. You can join organizations. Your kids can go to better schools. You can have better access to healthcare. So it just all ties into a different standard of living among a variety of health and social parameters. So,
no, I think you said it well. Like you're introduced to different cultural norms, different expectations, different people impact people. The people you're around think differently, and so their mores influence you in some, maybe possibly some negative ways, but certainly in some very positive ways.
Right.
And I don't want to underscore that last point you brought up, which the article brings up, which is this gets bequeathed to your kids.
Right.
So this is not only you're impacting the next generation.
That's correct.
And the next generation. And so, for all the talk we've had about student loan crisis, costs of college skyrocketing out of control, we needed an affirmative defense. And one thing that we've brought this up from time to time on the podcast, Dave, but I think it bears repeating. The country as a whole is still having a hangover from the global financial crisis in 2007 and 8. It really is.
Yeah.
And, we talked about it like even recently how, states slashed their subsidies to various schools. Right. But there are other effects that's had. There were more kids living in their parents' basements, and there were more kids working jobs that didn't require a college degree because they couldn't get one coming out. And that has produced almost a pendulum reaction that's created a jaded reaction where people are questioning the value of college. Part of that is still the hangover from the global financial crisis that we've not completely been emancipated from yet.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Well, I think that we are at another economic inflection point caused by this coronavirus recession. We already know that there are certain trends that have been accelerated by this virus that are not going to reverse themselves. The whole work from home is not reversing itself. The decline of retail, the continued decline of retail and retail jobs is something that's not going to reverse itself. The increasing reliance on more technologically advanced fields of computer science and engineering as our society moves in that direction. The fact is, in the next couple of years, there's going to be millions and millions less jobs in retail, in restaurants, in hospitality, in service, in factories, and manufacturing. We are that much closer to getting to automated cars that might obviate the need for trucking and taxis. So in order for our kids to be even competitive to the industries of tomorrow, they have to get higher education, because it's unlikely that a high school education and an associate's, or maybe not even a bachelor's, is going to be able to prepare our kids for the jobs that are coming down the pike and the jobs that will no longer be available to them.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, Dave, the role of automation and where we're going and how many jobs are going to be supplanted and displaced, and increasingly globalized world too, with more global competition. And so, if you're wondering, if you hear all of the talk of the cost of college and these stories, is it worth it? This is a factually based, data-based affirmation of college's value. And just remember that. Then you take everything in context. Now, I would never advocate for a one-size-fits-all. I do believe personally that not every single person has to go to college. I believe everybody has to get education. And I do believe in alternative paths for different people with different interests, different bents, different gifts. But that certainly should be a minority view. It shouldn't be the majority. There are instances when, my nephew went off to trade school and he's doing really well. He's got a trade and he's incredibly marketable. He loves what he does. He's happy. He's also doing well because he's got a marketable skill. But, that wasn't 4-year school. And so we're not advocating a one-size-fits-all approach, but we just wanted to reaffirm the value of education, and hopefully we did it effectively. We'll link the article to the show notes if you want to read it yourself. It's a really good article.
Sounds good.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Anika, it's been a while since we've got a Jalen update. What's going on? I know he's going to Emory next year. Like, when's he moving to Atlanta? What are the plans? He's going to be off campus. Give us the skinny.
Well, the skinny is he got pushed back. Of course, he wasn't excited about that, but they were supposed to start.
Is that related to Corona?
Yeah, definitely related to Corona. They were supposed to start now. And so he's scheduled to
I didn't realize he was starting in June.
But now he's starting August 19th, I think, 24.
Oh, I'll still be here soon.
Yeah, it's around the corner. So I told him.
Yeah, tell our listeners what he's going to study and his future plans.
So he wants to be an anesthesiologist assistant. And so he's in the AA program at Emory. And he worked his little tail off to get in that thing. So he worked long and hard for this one. So when he got that call, it's funny because he got the call the night he wrecked his car. So that was like the best news ever.
I remember.
That same night we went up there to check on him, went out to dinner. He called. He's like, guess who got into Emory? Ah! So that was awesome. Yep.
Yeah. And that's a 2-year program, isn't it?
Yep. It's a 2-year program. Mm-hmm.
So I can't wait. I've been telling one of my students who's in Emory Med School all about Jalen, and he's really excited about meeting them.
Oh, that's right. You did mention.
Go to a restaurant.
He's excited about that too. Yeah, that is going to be cool. Yeah. Awesome, what about your peeps?
Oh, my peeps?
Yeah.
So a lot's happening actually with my peeps. For one, Joy, this is real recent, hot off the press. Joy wants to be a mental health therapist, have her own private practice, but work for a while, in probably on a college campus. So she got an internship in Charlotte.
Oh, nice.
Doing, this all went down over the summer.
Oh, wow.
So she's going to be in Charlotte doing mental health counseling. Yeah. And meanwhile, she's studying for the GRE and applying to schools.
Oh, my goodness. Charlotte is the hot spot.
Oh, and more news on Karis. Karis officially became, see if I can say this name right, certified medical interpreter.
Wow.
So
I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
She has to wear scrubs and everything. Yeah, she kind of go. Well, you know what it is? A doctor is meeting with a patient and the doctor doesn't speak Spanish. So Karis is in there doing the interpretation from the doctor to the patient. And so and she told me something I never remembered. She said, I thought about being a nurse at one time. And she said, so I get to be in the healthcare field. So anyway.
Okay.
Good news for both of them. God is good.
Yeah. That's right.
All right, let's talk this chapter, Anika. And so we're looking at the difference between federal loans and private loans. And, I in reading this again, I was a little harsh. So I've lightened up a little bit. I'll share something really quickly. So, when I was in theological school, in Dallas in my 20s, and I was going to do like ministry. I feel like what I do now is a ministry, but different kind of ministry. And I remember this guy he's probably like 35. And I remember him saying something to me and I was kind of offended at the time. He said, you know what? You're a good guy, but you see the world too much in black and white. He said, not a problem. All you need to do is live a little longer. When you get to be 35, you'll be fine. You'll see the gray in life. And I remember I was offended. I was like, how is 35 the magic age? How can you say that? And I kind of think he was right.
Okay,
Like I do see like a lot more gray as I get older. And so, I'm going to share a little bit more of the gray and, as we go through this, but there's no question that there are a lot of advantages to federal loans over private loans. And let's talk about it. Have you read the chapter? What do you want to say?
Well, again, you got a list of awesome points here. So I'm betting that we're going to go through these guys. What do you think? You just want to rattle these off one by one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, well, let's first start because, I knew this, but this was a reminder that the federal loans come from the Department of Education. I don't know why that's not like solidified in my brain, but that's a thing. And that the private loans come from, like the banks, the credit unions, even the college itself, which is interesting in itself.
Yeah. And the other place where private loans come from is from online lenders too. That's been really growing in more recent years.
Okay.
Banks, credit unions, online lenders, and certainly they can come from the college themselves, or they can come from states as well, but there's not that many of them. And we got some other chapters where we'll be talking about state loans.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump this thing off because you start off quickly by saying how dangerous these things are. Primarily because of, the power of the institution is written in the small print that we often don't read.
Yeah, and they've gotten better, but they're still, you got to remember, like banks, these are publicly traded companies and they got to make a return to shareholders. So there can be a lot of little fine print in there that if you really read it closely or had your attorney read, you may not like. And so that's the point I was making there.
Okay. And then, of course, the trickiness in the loans where they're advertising these low rates. And it's oftentimes the rates that many people don't even qualify for. And Mark, you called them a teaser rate.
Yeah, so a couple things. Sometimes there's a teaser rate. Like, you ever seen these teaser credit card rates? Like, you'll pay whatever 1.9% for the first 6 months, and they go up. So there's teasers in that side of things. But what's more common is what you said, which is your rate could be, 3.9% or whatever, whatever the number is. And then what you don't know is that requires an 830 credit score. That kind of stuff.
Right.
That's really what I was referring to.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next one is that they often cost more than the federal loans. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with these rates, right?
Yeah. So federal loans are usually fixed, where private are often variable. So that's one place where there's savings as well. But also in general, the interest rates for federal are lower. The reason why you have to say in general is because federal loans rates are fixed, okay? And this is true for really all of them. This is true for direct subsidized, unsubsidized, parent plus, grad plus. They're fixed rates. The thing about private loans is they are so dependent on your credit score and your, debt to income ratios. And so they're kind of all over the place. But in most instances, normally what I tell people, if someone's trying to figure out, well, all I care about is what's going to be less money. That's all I care about. I will usually say to somebody, unless your credit score is over 780, like just off of the pure bottom line, you're going to end up paying less for the federal loan.
Okay.
Now, certainly you have people that have over 780 credit score. I should have looked up what percentage of the population it is. And I'm not saying if it's over 780, it will be less. But what I am saying, if there's somebody who look, I don't care about all these other things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of different advantages to Fed loans. I don't care about all that. All I care about is my bottom line. In those cases, I'll say, okay, if your credit score is over 780, then it's worth at least checking and doing a comparison. Doesn't mean it will be lower, but sometimes it will be, especially for parent plus loans. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay. And then speaking of credit, so of course these require, the private loans require the credit checks. And for a student, oftentimes they don't have enough credit built up. So that requires a cosigner, which of course we know that's signing that other person's life away, which we don't ever want to do.
Yeah. And here's where I have to say, in fairness, it's not just that I see the world a little bit more gray now. It's also that private loans have gotten better. They really have. And you're seeing more and more of them now that will say you need a cosigner, but if you have 12 straight months of on-time payments, we'll drop the cosigner requirement. You never used to see that. Okay. So that's an improvement in them. So I do feel I need to acknowledge that, because that's always been a big deterrent to these loans. Like the parent or the other adult is putting all of their, significant amount of their equity at stake, right?
Right.
But that's still true. That is one of the big advantages. No question, no cosigner. No question. The federal government is investing in your history without you having to have a track record of, having, stable job or assets. But I will say private loans have gotten better. Some of them it's extremely rare to see no cosigner necessary. Normally that's going to mean that the person themselves has to have some equity themselves or an impeccable credit rate, right? But more and more you're seeing them remove that if you're on good behavior for a while.
Okay. All right. And then federal loans are offering more flexible repayment options as opposed to private loans. Could this possibly be a way where some of them might be getting better or not? Like, are they not getting into the flexible repayment plans?
Nah, I haven't seen a lot of change there because the federal loan just has so much because they offer standard payment, graduated payment, extended payment, and then all kinds of income-based repayment options that you don't see that level of breadth of offerings in the private loans. So I think that's definitely one of the advantages. Okay. And especially the flexibility of the income-based option, because you have to remember, think about it from a private perspective. You're a business and your goal is to make money. And it's just very hard to make money with some of these income-based repayment plans because they literally can go down to you paying zero if your income is that low. And so a private bank, they're like, hey, we're not making any money, so we can't go there.
Okay. And I guess I want to jump to, no, let me go ahead into this one. So you talk about how complex the private loans are, but you didn't get into great detail about the complexity of it. Can you give us an example of it?
Well, just kind of what I was saying before, like with federal loans, you know exactly what your rate's going to be, period. Okay. And they're fixed, your terms are going to be. With private, one, you've got all that red tape that I mentioned before. You got to read the fine print carefully. Two, the rate is completely all over the place because it completely varies based on, credit check and assets to equity ratio. So there's just a lot more complexity. You don't know what you're going into until you go into it. That's what I mean.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com.
All right. And then the offering of the forbearance from federal loans. Well, when times get tough, they allow you to defer your payment in a certain period of time where private loans don't do that.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the biggest advantages for federal loans, besides the fact that the rate is usually better and it's fixed and it's clear, is if you fall on tough times, then there's just a lot more flexibility. That's the bottom line. Tough times could be loss of job, unemployed, underemployed, decide to go back to school, all those kinds of things. There's a lot more flexibility. And I think 2 of the last 3 podcasts, I gave definitions of deferment and forbearance. I'm not going to do that again. People can go back and listen. And now that we have transcripts up, you can just go back to the last couple of episodes. You see my enthusiasm, and you can just search the word deferment or forbearance, and it'll pull right up, yellow highlight it, click it, and play. So before you were like on a wild goose chase through a 2-hour podcast to find what you wanted, but now you're going to get so sick of me saying, go to the transcript.
Transcript
my
is
new go-to line.
awesome. That transcripts are awesome. I'm going to tell you.
I have to tell you, the guy that runs that service, and his name's Pete, and I have to really give him a shout out, for his service. But he hounded me forever trying to get me to use the service. You're like, okay, like go away, like okay, I get. And then finally, I don't know, he said something that just got my attention. I'm like, I think I need to do a little bit more research on this. And then presto, you liked it, Dave liked it, everybody likes it, and we got transcripts.
I love it. Love it.
And one other advantage, if you fall on hard times, is how federal loans handle default and delinquency. Private loans will put you into delinquency and default much sooner than federal loans.
All right. So federal loans, what are we talking about here? They give the forgiveness programs. Of course, those are awesome through the federal loan programs, which I'm sure there are probably none with the private ones.
Yeah, that's something you won't get, Public service forgiveness, there's a teacher forgiveness, there's different forgiveness options. They're not the easiest things to get. There's even a graduated pay or extended pay forgiveness if you've had a loan for over 25 years. If you really want to know about that, go back and listen to my interview with Elaine Griffin Rubin, where we got into that in some detail. You can see that on our website. Just look her up. But yeah, that's one thing that they just can't offer. And once again, it's not that easy to qualify for forgiveness programs. I don't want everybody to think, I just get a loan, it's going to be, obliterated. But there are certain people that can qualify for that with the federals.
And so we pretty much touched on this before, but it is a separate point in that the federal loans are fixed and the private ones have, they're variables, these variable rate loans.
Yeah. We've already mentioned that. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, you already keep it moving, right? Okay, so federal loans don't have prepayment fees, which I don't ever get that. Like, how do you charge me for trying to get ahead? Like, that's so ridiculous.
I know. And I want to say this, most good private loans don't do that. I would never, ever, ever encourage someone to take a private loan out that has prepayment penalties. But that's one of those things that can be in the fine print. That's one of those fine print things we're talking about. Many of them do.
All right. And this next one, I think you mentioned this recently in the last couple of weeks. If a student dies, that the federal loans are pretty much erased. Where and also there's sometimes a note when the student becomes has some severe disability or disabled in some kind of way, where private loans, if the person dies, is going on to the next person.
Yeah, now here's where private loans have improved. They got so much blowback for doing that that most of the private loans now do not pass on the balance to the cosigner with death, where you'll find why disagreement is on disability. That's where you'll see a lot of them, they will not annul the loan for disability. Most of them will for death. They just got in a high level. They just got excoriated in the press, as they should have. So most of them have gotten rid of that provision, but watch the disability claim. I mean, imagine, you're a parent, you do co-signing, and then, your child's in a really bad accident, whatever, they're paralyzed or something like that. And, you got to keep paying these loans. Like, that's not cool.
All right. And then the next one is that federal loans can be consolidated, where most private cannot. Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah. The thing with, there's a word. Yeah. What I want to say with that is there is a way to consolidate with private. It's called refinancing, So you basically have to do refinancing, right? That's the only, but consolidation is just a real simple thing to do with the federal. Just talk to your loan servicer and combine your loans together. It's just that's a lot easier than going through a refinancing option.
Okay. And this next one, which is my favorite, is that the government, for federal loans, the government pays the interest. They'll pay it up to 6 months, after graduation, or if you drop out of school, or if you drop, below halftime or something like that. It's halftime status in school. But unless that's not happening, then they are paying the interest on these loans.
Yeah, and let me be really technical here, be precise, because this is important. So there's several federal loans, right? You've got the federal subsidized, the federal unsubsidized, you've got the Parent Plus loan, and then you've got the Grad Plus loan. Those are basically 4 different federal programs. So it is for the federal subsidized loan, which if your cost of attendance is under the cost of the school, you could qualify for it. That's the one where the government will carry your interest for. But that's the biggest one for undergraduates.
Okay.
That's the biggest loan for undergraduates. So it's worth mentioning.
All right, cool beans. And then one of your favorites is that the federal loans have limits. So you can't, it's discouraging all this irresponsible lending, and the person can't take out the cost of attendance and can't pay it back. So the federal loans protect the, people in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that before. The limits of $27,000 over 4 years or $31,000 over, 5 or 6 years. Now, I will say this in fairness to private loans is because they're running debt to income ratios, they're making sure they're not getting burned. And when it comes to the graduate loan, you can borrow over $100,000 for grad school. And so some of the debt income limits that are in place protect the graduate student from taking out too much debt in the same way that the income caps protect undergrads.
Okay. All right.
So that's better for the undergrad, but on the grad school side, sometimes the way the privates are set up can actually protect you a little better.
Okay. All right. And this final one that I have here is that private loans often cause you to overborrow, which is interesting. How does that work?
Well, once again, not having the caps in place, right? Not having the caps. Now, once again, the Parent Plus loan is the worst one for overborrowing. We've talked about that already. And that's a federal loan because they only look at adverse credit history. So there are some protections in place by looking at debt income ratios, but there are a lot of people out there that will offer a lot of things, especially if they can do a lot of creative things. Like if they start you out on a low variable rate and your debt income ratios qualify, they can get you to make some commitments that you don't want to make. Remember, the incentive on them is the more you borrow, the more interest they make.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of the list. Anything else?
So I want to say a few things. The rates have never been lower. 2.75 right now for undergrad, direct sub and unsub. That's the lowest ever, Anika. The last time the rates were this low was 2005. So that's 15 years ago. And they were 2.88. So this is like better than ever. I'm not trying to encourage people to borrow if they don't need it, but if you do need a little bit of money, like it's never been better. And I do want to say something about private loans. So the reality is there are times that people need a little bit more money. They just do. And the $5,500 is not enough to cover their costs. And so then where else do you go for money if you don't have it? And my view, and I won't say it again, but if you fall within the proper debt to income ratios, meaning looking at your maximum first year pay, taking 80% of that and looking at 80% of the net pay, if you need a little bit more money and you're going to come out with a job that's going to pay $60,000, okay, let's say 80% of that and after taxes is 40, okay, I'm comfortable with you borrowing up to 40 if you're going to come out making 60. And the max undergrad loan cap is 27. So where do you get the 13? So one of the places where private does come in is I can't pay it and the federal's not giving me enough. And so there are times when that does make sense. There's another time when it makes sense, and that is when you have sky high credit and you know that you're not going to need the loan for very long. One of the bad things about the federal loans, Anika, is they have very high origination fees. By the way, do you know what origination fee is for a loan?
You mean literally how much it is or what it is?
Yeah, like if I was to say, Anika, what's an originate? No. What is it? What's an origination fee?
Just to start the loan. Like it's like an administrative fee. I guess one of those admin fees are always trying to charge unnecessarily.
Correct. So an origination fee is an upfront fee paid upfront, right, for processing the loan. And it basically covers the cost of processing the loan, the application, the underwriting, and the funding of the loan. And one thing I don't like is the direct plus loan, the thing is over 4%. Okay. And I know these new rates dropped, but the new origination fee numbers don't come out until October. And it's consistently been over 4%. So if I'm with someone and they're like, look, I'm in good financial situation. I don't think we're going to need forbearance or protection, deferment protection. I just need a little bit of money. And look, I've got a bonus coming in pretty soon, so I'm going to be able to pay it right back really quickly. And all I care about is the bottom line. What's the lower rate? Sometimes this high origination fee with the plus loan can make private loans the better rate, the better, just from a bottom line standpoint for people that have high credit and people that maybe they're about to get a salary increase or they've got some money coming in and they just need something really short term to tie them over. So those are really the times. If you don't quite have enough to cover your fees and you're still being responsible by borrowing a little bit more, those are the times that I'm comfortable with it. Something I didn't say is that private loans usually don't have origination fees. So there can be a potentially pretty big savings there. So for example, a 4% origination fee on a $30,000 loan is over $1,200. So that could be a significant savings and is one advantage to the private loans. Now, there's some people that would be a lot more comfortable than me. They would say, look, my kid's going to graduate at 22. They're probably, let's say they work for 45 years, so 67. If I have to take out $1,000 more a year, $45,000 extra, not a year, but $45,000 extra for them to go to what they regard as a better college, I think I'll get that back with the ROI over the course of their career. Mm-hmm. And so that's I'm very conservative because I've seen what high levels of debt does to people and when they're in their 30s. But that's kind of a little bit of my own personal bias. Like there are other people that say, no, I think going to the better school is worth me taking out that extra money and I think I'll get it back over the long haul. And so understand that I'm really conservative when it comes to debt. And, that's something that each person kind of needs to figure out on their own how conservative they are. Right. Does that make any sense, Nika?
It does.
Yes, no?
But yeah, it does. And I have a question for you. So how do you, I know it's like 1 billion private loans out there. So is there some kind of like resource where we can go to say, okay, these are the good ones or this is the things that you need to look out for? Like, how do you narrow down which private loans to take out or which ones to trust?
You just know how to tee up my recommended resource for the week.
Look at me.
I planted you there with that question. So now our listeners have to listen all the way to at least the midpoint of the interview to get a great recommended resource to help you know how to shop for private loans. Okay?
Well, you do answer it just
so
not right now.
that one up good.
Cool beans. Love
exactly. I do want to say one other thing. So there is another advantage to private, which is we haven't talked this much. We haven't talked a lot about what happens when it comes to you not paying your bills. What happens? Your loan. Well, what happens with federal loans is the federal government can garnish your wages. They don't need a court order to do it. Okay? And with private loans, one, there's a statute of limitations on this, where with federal loans, there's no statute of limitation at all. And also, they can just go right in and garnish without a court order. So that's something else. Now, one advantage on the federal is that with the federal, they can take out as much as 25% of the borrower's income, okay, in terms of what can be garnished. Wow. And so that's one of the differences as well. So when it comes to garnishing, it is a little bit easier for the federal government to do that in terms of garnishing your wages. So that's just, I'm trying to be balanced. I almost said something I don't like. A slogan from something I don't like, fair and balanced. I'm trying to be truly fair and balanced, not like people who claim they're fair and balanced and they're not.
My goodness. Well,
let me change the topic. It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark, this week's question is our bonus content. So it's not a question, actually. But you're going to get into...
Do you want to explain bonus content, Anika, for our first-time listeners, how we do that?
You know what? Let's talk about the history of bonus content. What do we do? You did something one day, and you were like, oh, that was kind of cool. We should do that like every other 4 or 5 episodes. So that's how bonus content came about. I do remember that.
Yes. I can't ever remember what it was, but I remember I was just itching and burning to share some content about a topic. And it wasn't in the book. And the listener never sent it in. It wasn't on an article. Mm-hmm. So we said every 5th week, instead of doing a question from a listener, I'll just share something I have some passion on that I'm itching and burning to share. And so that's what we do. And it's every like even number and fifth number. So like 130, 135, 140, 145. So we're up to 125. So it's bonus content week. It replaces our question from the listener.
Content week. All right. So this week we're talking about LinkedIn. Love LinkedIn. And Mark, please tell us all about how to research our colleges on LinkedIn. At least the colleges that you built your list around. Like, how do you search those guys on LinkedIn?
I'm very passionate about this, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. So our regular listeners may know over a year ago, Cheryl from Alabama sent a question in about using LinkedIn in the college admission process.
Oh, I vaguely remember.
And I
that.
did. Do you remember that, Anika? Yes, no?
I did. A little bit.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember this, but I said at the end, I want to come back to this because you can actually use LinkedIn to find out where graduates from the college you're interested in, where do they go? What jobs do they end up doing? Where do they go? And so I said that we'll come back and do a part 2. But what I focused on that time was more how to use LinkedIn to do research on the admission officers at your school, learn about their backgrounds.
Right. Yeah.
I focused on how to reach out to alumni and to, get connections with them that you can use to learn about the school or to get internships. But I didn't focus on how to use it to learn more about the kinds of jobs that graduates come out with. And I also didn't use it to talk about how you can look at a company and you can find out what schools do they hire from. So I'm doing something. I'm acting like I'm a teacher over here, Anika. I'm giving everybody a homework assignment. Oh no,
goodness.
School.
Oh, goodness.
But trust me, this one is good. This is profound. And I'm really glad that I put off doing this part 2 right away, because probably about half of what I'm going to share with you today, I already knew. And I was planning on doing it in part 2. But the other half comes from Mary from Manchester, the same Mary from Manchester who's going to bake Dave oatmeal raisin cookies. Same Mary. No, she is a data analyst. And she sent this in to me. And about 60% of it I knew, but 40% I didn't. So if I would have done this back then, it would only be 60% as good as it's going to be now.
Okay.
So I'm glad I put it off. And thank you, Mary, for sharing your data analysis in the college context. So this is fantastic. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you're at LinkedIn.com, and then everybody knows on LinkedIn, right? You go to the search bar, and there's a few ways you can do it. Now, I actually did this literally today. I did a presentation with one of my students, okay? And at the end, and by the way, just so you know, don't throw all my students' names out here on blast like this. I said at the end, I said, can I share this? I've got a podcast recording tonight, And he was like, sure, of course you can. So shout out to Sebastian in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey.
Aww.
So I literally showed him how to use this. So Sebastian is very interested in computer engineering, and he'd love it if it'd be possible to kind of be in the Boston area. So I was rolling out my school list presentation with him. So 2 of the schools I have on his list are Northeastern and Boston University, amongst, many others. So what happens is I'll show you what I showed him. You go to LinkedIn.com. There's a couple ways you can do this. In the search bar, you can put in Northeastern University. And as I do this, share this, Anika, I'm doing it right now. I'm literally doing it. So you go to Northeastern University. Now you're going to see a ton of different Northeastern alumni, Northeastern engineering. Make sure you pick Northeastern University school. Otherwise, you'll pick the wrong one. So you want to do that. And you can do this for any college. You guys can, I'm giving you a homework assignment. Do it for where you went to school, or do it for where your kids are considering going. Have your kids do it. So once you do the search, on the left column, under the home tab, you'll see home, about, jobs, alumni. You want to click the alumni tab. What this is going to show you is where Northeastern alumni are working, which is really cool. Now, it auto defaults back to 1900 to 2020. I don't think you want to know about your great-great-great-great-grandfather in 1900. So I always tell people to change it. And I like to either do the search for the most recent 10 years or 5 years or 7 years. So I'll just do, what do you want me to do? I'm literally doing this as we talk, Anika.
Let's do 5.
I'm going to go back 5 years, 10.
Yeah, let's do 5.
Okay. So we're going to look at what happened to Northeastern alumni from 2015 to 2020. So you just change the 1900 to 2015 and hit the return on your return bar. And presto, you're going to have all kinds of information. Now, you're going to want to hit show more because there's a button at the bottom that says show less or show more. It's just going to show the first 3 places where they work. So you want to hit show more. Now, first of all, it'll tell you where they live. So for example, Northeastern grads, the number 1 place they live, not surprising, greater Boston area, right? 2nd, New York City. 3rd, San Francisco. 4th, Seattle. 5th, China. 6th, Washington, D.C. 7th, L.A. 8th, Chicago. 9, India. 10, Philadelphia. Then Rhode Island, United Kingdom, Canada, and then the ATL. I wasn't going to stop till I got to the ATL.
I was going to say, when is it coming? I was waiting. Gracious.
So the ATL's been having some rough last couple of days, Anika, but I don't want to get too heavy with that in our intro. It's just too heavy. So we'll just mosey on off of that. But so then on the right side, it says, where do they work? Okay. Now, for pretty much every school you look up, you're going to see the number 1 place they work is the university. So just expect that. The university hires tons and tons of people. They've been there. They've interned. People love them. They get hired. And they become professors, all kinds of stuff. So that's common. So the next 2, let's look at where they look. The second most common, I'll go down the list. Number 2, Massachusetts General Hospital. Number 3, Amazon. Number 4, Wayfair. Number 5, Amazon Web Services. Number 6, Google. 7, PwC. Next, 8th, Microsoft. Okay. And then it goes on and on and on. It goes down and you'll see the Apples, the Facebooks, Boston Consulting. So you can find out where they're getting jobs, which is really cool. Now, if you click the next button, there's a big button that says next right under alumni. If you click that, it tells you what they actually do and where they studied. So what do they do? These Northeastern alum? Number 1 is engineering. That's the biggest one. Then education, then research, then operations, then healthcare, then business development, then IT. Now, what is it that they studied at Northeastern? That's all there. The number 1 thing is computer science. Okay. And then business administration, then finance, then IT, information technology, mechanical engineering, psychology, economics, computer engineering. Now, I knew this because, working with Sebastian, and he's interested in either computer engineering, probably his first choice, or computer science or IT. So he loved this because I could show him, 1, Northeastern alum are getting jobs at the Googles and the Amazons and the Microsofts, right? But then he also saw the number 1 thing they studied is computer science, and computer engineering and IT are all in the top 7. And if you want to go even deeper than that, you can click computer engineering, which is his first choice, which I'm doing right now. And it will tell you where the people that got computer engineering that graduated with computer engineering degrees, where do they work? Number 1, Northeastern. Number 2, Amazon. Number 3, Amazon Web Services. Number 4, Google. Number 5, Wayfair. Number 6, Microsoft. All of that is there. So it's a way of reverse studying what are the outcomes that happen when you graduate from a particular school. Isn't that cool, Anika?
That is very cool. Wow. So what about, I get that with the
It's
larger, awesome. I get that with the larger, brand, I guess, okay, this school is known for this, but okay, if you put something into a school, I don't know, Richmond University or Richmond, whatever, University of Richmond.
It works for everywhere.
Okay. But the question is, if I want to go in education and I don't see a lot of education jobs out there, is that going to dissuade me from wanting to go to Richmond? Does that make sense?
Well, there's a couple ways you can use this. You can look up and see where is it that people that graduate from the schools you're interested in, where do they work? What degrees do they have? And you can look at it that way. The other thing that you can do, which is really fascinating, is you can reverse this. So let me reverse it. So I'm going to look up, instead of starting with the school, I'm going to search the company. So the same search bar, I'm going to put the CDC, the Center of Disease Control.
Okay.
Right in the ATL, right? And we can search for this. So you search under company, Center for Disease Control, which I'm doing. And then here you'll see that same left tab, home, about, life, jobs, people, videos, ads. You want to click people on this one. Okay, so now I've clicked people and it says there's 15,152 employees at the CDC. Okay. Now, where do they live? Well, of course, the CDC is in Atlanta. So over 9,000 of them are in Atlanta. Then 400 are in Washington, D.C. Then Pittsburgh, 336, Kenya, 318, Cincinnati, Fort Collins, Colorado, Those are the top 5. And then New York. Now, where did they study? Okay. So let's talk about this. This is fascinating because what you'll find here is what you find. And I spent so much time working on this. You'll see this as a common theme. What you'll find is they're household names that have brand reputations, but then there's something known as like local prestige, right? So a lot of times people haven't heard of a school across the country, but in the region, they know it's really, really, really good. So, for example, when I look at the CDC, the number 1 place is Emory, and Emory started the CDC, so that shouldn't surprise you, right? But guess what's number 2? Take a guess, Anika. You know Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
You know this area.
Right.
Anywhere in the country. What do you think is the second biggest place that the CDC hires from?
I don't know. I would say Georgia Tech, but no.
Georgia State.
Are you serious?
Georgia State.
Wow.
Number 2.
Oh, wow.
And that's a school that locally is well known, but nationally it may not be, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Number 3 is the University of Georgia. Number 4 is North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Number 5 is Georgia Tech. Number 6 is the University of Michigan. Number 7 is Johns Hopkins. Number 8 is University of Florida. Then you get into some other schools that are really well known in the local area, like University of South Florida. People may not know that they've got a really good program. Kennesaw State's on the list. University of Alabama, Birmingham, UAB. We've talked about how strong their health program is. So it's pretty awesome. It really is. And one thing you'll find this over and over, is schools are well known in certain areas. So, for example, if I'd click Microsoft, right, and do this, I'm not going to go through it again. You'll find that, of course, the University of Washington is at the top because it's a powerhouse program in computer science and computer engineering and engineering and so many different IT. But San Jose State is up really high because San Jose State is known in that area for being very strong, even that nationally people may not be the first school that comes to someone's mind when they think about a really strong IT or engineering school.
Yep.
So what are you thinking over there, Anika? And you can use this for big schools, small schools, anything. I just
want to spend more time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is that thing has come such a long way. I mean, I don't use it nearly as much as I need to, in terms of optimizing it. But yeah.
Well, think about it. What LinkedIn has is it has in the profiles, it has where you went to school and what your job is. So they have the ability to run like really, really large numbers and sample sizes. Right?
Yeah.
And so, by the way, because you asked about University of Richmond, I just have to do it. So I'm going to University of Richmond, alumni. I'll put in 2010 to 2020 just to give you a little 10-year sample. And I knew this was going to be here because, once again, there's such a power in business. So what do you see? Capital One is bang, right after the University of Richmond. Capital One is headquartered in Richmond. Right?
Yeah.
So they're hiring tons and tons and tons of people. Capital One. And then you go on, you see things like Deloitte because they've got such a powerful accounting program. And you see a number of other things, included in here as well. When you go to Microsoft, by the way, and you do a search for Microsoft, guess what 2 of the top schools you'll find for Microsoft? I already said University of Washington, of course, right?
Something in California.
So the interesting thing with Microsoft, and I'm going to give you a quiz before we get off of here. And this is going to be a hard question, but I'll see if you can get it. So you go to Microsoft, you search for people. Okay. I'm going to tell you the top places where Microsoft hires all across the country. Number 1, the University of Washington. Number 2, Georgia Tech. I don't know if that surprises you or not. Number 2, Georgia Tech. Then you get an Indian university, University of Mumbai, India. Then you get Stanford. Okay. You get another Indian university. You get USC. You get UC Berkeley. And then down the list a little ways, you get MIT, Harvard, Northwestern, Wharton School, and a few others. But let me ask you this. Why do you think Georgia Tech is number 2 in the entire country, ahead of Cal Berkeley, ahead of MIT, ahead of all of these places, even that it's 3,000 miles away? Why do you think? Besides the fact that, we know it's an amazing school, but so is Stanford. It's ahead of Stanford.
I know.
It's ahead of MIT. It's ahead of Cal Berkeley. Why do you think?
I absolutely don't know. What is it?
So one of the reasons is because Georgia Tech has such a killer co-op program. So people,
okay.
And they have partnerships with over half of the world's 500 biggest companies. So and we already know these Georgia Tech are total brainiacs. Like these kids are smart there as anywhere in the country, but they're going out there and they're doing co-op. And then the employer's like, look, I like your critical thinking. I like your work ethic. I like how you fit into the culture. I like how you get along with the employees. So I'm offering you a job.
That makes sense.
And you find Northeastern is really high for these things as well, which is really cool. Okay. And if you really want to get deep, you can click and you can go in and even find out like what they studied. So anyway, I want everybody to try this as an assignment. I'm giving a homework assignment for the first time in 125 episodes. But I think it's one you're willing to do, Anika.
I've absolutely gonna start as soon as we hang up.
Well, let's hang up so you can get at it.
I'm gonna tell you, LinkedIn. I get re-inspired every time I think about LinkedIn or get exposed to something new on LinkedIn because everything about that platform is just off the charts. It's amazing, and I can't imagine people not using it, and it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I'm really thankful to Mary in Manchester because, like I said, I knew 60% of this. I didn't know the level of granularity you can get. And she showed me a couple things that I didn't know. I was planning on sharing this. I was already excited about it, but it would have only been 60% as good. And so everybody go ahead and do this. And I'm also going to ask, by the way, I'm going to ask our sound engineer if he can make just a separate audio link just of this section so that if anybody wants to, just this link sent to them without having to dive all into the podcast and find it, they could ask for that. Oh, then again, they can just use transcripts now.
Hello, Mark, transcripts.
I don't know if they should. Transcript. Just go to the transcript. For those of you who missed our last couple episodes, we have a new transcript feature on our homepage, yourcollegeboundkid.com. Click transcript, click episode 125, and then you'll see a magnifying glass. Type in the word LinkedIn, and it'll be all highlighted in yellow, and then just click it, and it'll play right from there. So I don't even have to worry about the separate audio link.
Bada bing.
Bada bo. Now you go do some homework on this. You can look at North Carolina A&T. You can look up Emory. You can look up wherever you want.
I'm on it.
I had someone tell me, I was sharing this with another client, and they said, you told me North Carolina State was a good school, but I didn't realize how good it was. I started using this and saw how many, particularly their engineering and their vet school is amazing too. But this is one way you can validate the schools you're looking at and look them up, and I, you know what I like using it. There's a lot of these underrated gems, Anika, that fly under the radar. And sometimes people are like, if I haven't heard of it, it can't be any good, and that's a common refrain you get when you do what I do. And so that's how I'll use this. Like one school I like a lot, I think it's really underrated, but a lot of people haven't heard about it, is Quinnipiac. It's an excellent underrated school. And so, you go here, do the same thing, do the search, and you'll find, what you'll often find is locally, this is a school in Connecticut. You look in there and what do you find? What's their second biggest thing? ESPN, which is in Connecticut, right? So ESPN is hiring people from Quinnipiac. So is the Hartford hiring people from Quinn and Pfizer and Cigna and Deloitte. And then because they have some really exceptional programs when it comes to things like communication, media studies, journalism, you can go in and when you look at what they actually do, which you can search that and find out what they actually do, what do they do when they graduate from Queen? What did they study? They studied health services, marketing, business, mass communication, media, finance, public relations, image management, journalism. So if a school has a really strong program, it should be popping up as one of the top ones in terms of what people majored at. And if you want to click that, you can find out, like, where did they get a job, right? Like I clicked public image management. Where did Quinnipiac grads who graduated in public image management, where did they work? Well, they went to work, besides Quinnipiac, which the school is always going to be number one. They went to Yale. And their next choice was NBC Universal Media. So if I'm talking to someone and they don't think that's a good school, I can pull up and show them where people actually get jobs. And a lot of times that will give them confidence. So anyway,
Nice.
I kind of went off on my hobby horse, but now you see why we have bonus content.
Yes, yes. Love it.
And now you need to go because I want you to go search all your schools and tell me what you thought.
Got to turn in my homework.
Do your homework, everybody. Okay, friends. We had a fantastic interview, in my opinion, last week. Vanessa Didyk, one of my favorites, partly because I believe Zeemee can help so many students. And today is part 2. And today what Vanessa does is she talks about how Zeemee reduces summer melt, something we're all very concerned about. She talks about how Zeemee lets you get to know what the students are actually like on the campus you're attending before you get there. And she talks about how this current generation is very different from previous generations. It's important that you understand that if you want to be maximally effective with them. Listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Zeemee is completely free to use for students. They can download the app in the App Store on iOS and in the Google Play Store if they're on an Android phone. And they will go through a short little onboarding where they answer a couple questions so that we can capture, name, what year you're graduating, tell us which schools you are interested in. And then students can follow any schools that they're interested in and immediately jump into the chats and meet other students who are interested in those schools as well. If those schools are partnered with us, then they'll also see video from the students on that campus. And it all kicks off like the moment you install the app and create that account, you have access to so much information. And then we also actually have a number of communities that we spun up last fall, I think. And these were some of the things, Mark, you and I were talking about. So we launched these communities that actually are sort of live like above college communities. And this connects students across the country to one another. So we have over 100,000 students who opted into our diversity and inclusion groups, for example. And so these are chat groups for students from specific demographic backgrounds. They opt in, they decide which groups they want to participate in and where they want to connect with other students. We have, I think it's about 90,000 students who've opted into our college majors chats, where they can actually chat with other students interested in the same majors. Again, that lives outside of individual schools. Students can support each other through the college application process in our application station chats. So we have a lot of different groups, and we curate and put together a lot of information to help students. So their feeds are actually full of information about financial aid and about the application process. And we've recruited some high school counselors and some college admissions folks that we respect and ask them to create content as well. So it's a pretty rich experience. And then they can, as we've been talking about, connect with the admissions folks at the schools that they're interested in. They can direct message them and ask questions. They can ask questions in broader, ask a counselor type chats for those schools. And then they can connect with the other students who are also applying. And that gives a lot of security and lowers the stress for students. If they can ask someone else, hey, did you get confirmation that your letters of rec were received? What does that confirmation look like? Then the other students help kind of support them through, and they feel like they're all in this together. It's an incredibly supportive community, and I can't stop kind of jumping in and seeing what's going on because it's the most heartwarming communication that you'll ever see. It's not competitive. It's incredibly supportive.
I'm sure one question you might get is, how do I know that all these students that are in these groups aren't just plants by the administration there to give an administrative PR spin, similar to how a tour guide sometimes can do. Like some tour guides are incredibly authentic. They're just students and they're going to tell it to you how it is. Others have been really coached to only say things that make the school look amazing. How could a prospective family have assurance that that's not what they're getting when they interact with all these students?
I would say anybody that knows anything about Gen Z or has worked with anybody in Gen Z would know not to try that. I think you will get roasted alive. So I think that alone, the fear of how savvy this generation is would halt anyone who thinks that that's a good idea. Anybody who actually partners with us, we give a lot of coaching about actually how hands off we recommend that colleges are in the student chats. And then we create chats for them to be able to answer questions for students sort of separately. I've never seen that happen. And again, I would say it's probably just because this population is so savvy, they would sniff that out in a heartbeat.
That's such a great answer, and I just had to ask it. I have to tell you a quick story. So my first year when I was doing admissions at a boarding school, one of my jobs was to oversee the tour guide program.
Yeah.
So we had 86 tour guides, and I had to do the training and manage the scheduling and everything. And I'm out traveling all around the world recruiting students. So I'm like, the last thing in the world I'm going to do is be up doing all these receptions at night and fairs at night, traveling all around, and then have somebody let all of my work go down like a deck of cards by saying some indiscriminate thing or by dressing inappropriately. So I implemented this whole policies of new practice. And my dean of admission just let me run with it. It's your program, run with it. So I changed the dress code. And before I got there, basically anybody could sign up willy-nilly whenever they wanted for a tour. And then I went more to no, we're going to be hand-picked and hand-screened. And kids were not quite picketing, but it's this open revolt on campus. You can imagine, this is all business stuff. This is marketing. You're not letting us be authentic. It was really a lot of brouhaha. So I had a flashback when you shared that. I still have some scars from that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what makes Zeemee really special, is that it is a really authentic space. And the schools that are partnered with us want it to be an authentic space. They understand the value in communicating what life is really like. They want, yes, they want to yield as many students as they possibly can, but they want to yield the right students who are going to be happy. And that's what Zeemee does, is help students figure out who's a really good fit. And so we actually do help schools to improve, their melt and improve their yield. But the reason is not through any, fancy wizard tricks. It's that we're actually just helping the students and the schools find each other, and helping the students to figure out what, you had mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, what the feel of a campus is like. And the feel of a campus is the people. And I've been saying this a lot lately in this environment, because schools have been asking us about, what about all the students who can't visit anymore? We can't have these on-campus events. They're not going to see what our campus looks like. And I've been telling everybody, as much as it is important for a student to see how green the grass is, or, how red the brick buildings are, that's wonderful. And it's wonderful in a, non-COVID world for us to be able to demonstrate that in the app. But what our audience and our users really want is to know what a campus feels like. What's the vibe? Who are the people? And who are the people I'm going to be living with? Who are the people I'm going to be studying with? Are these going to be my best friends forever, who I'm going to invite to my wedding? Who is this my future? And I think that's what Zeemee does really well, and and that's why it is such an authentic space. The current students who are in the app representing an institution are there to say, here's what's awesome. Here's what's painful. Here's what I love about the school. Here's why it might be a good fit for you. Here's why it might not be. And I think that that's really, really valuable, to have that real conversation.
Yeah, I know it's valuable. And I can see how Zeemee could be really attractive to colleges as a way of reducing melt.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
The recommended resource, as promised for episode 125, is an article that appeared in the Student Loan Hero website, and it is entitled The 8 Best Student Loans Available. It is written by Shannon Insler, and it was written in May of 2020, so very recently. And I'm going to let you read the article to see which are the actual best 8 student loans. But if you want to know the main categories they look for when they're assessing what the best loans are, those are as follows. They look at what's the best loan if you want a speedy cosigner release. In other words, getting out of the cosigner. What's the best loan for parent borrowers? What's the best loan when it comes to repayment term options and flexibility? What's the best loan for a student that doesn't have a social security number? What's the best loan if you're concerned about a comprehensive approval process? What's the best loan if you're looking for unemployment protection during the repayment phase? And what if you just refuse to have a cosigner? Do you have any options? They look at the best loans for that. We'll leave a link to the article in the show notes. We'll now return to my interview with Vanessa Didyk of Zeemee. You know, when I was doing boarding school admissions, one thing we did there was we interviewed, admissions officers interviewed every single applicant. You don't see that much with colleges where admissions officers do it. Some schools do. A lot of the women's colleges do that. Some of the small liberal arts colleges do it. And some bigger schools do it, actually. But one of my favorite questions to ask every applicant is, what is your biggest fear? And probably 60 to 70% of students said, in essence, this is my distillation of what they said and putting it kind of succinctly. Will they like me and will I like them? That's what 7 out of 10 people said. Some version of that. Maybe even closer to 8 out of 10. This is, I didn't statistically track it. This is anecdotal. And so, you know, the way I see Zeemee coming to play there, particularly once students have chosen a school, or even when they're deciding on a school, when people feel like they found their tribe.
Yes.
Then it feels like a safe space. And it doesn't feel like emotionally distant. Does that make sense or not?
Absolutely. Yes. And we actually use the same term, you know, we say it too, find your tribe, like find your people and, you know, figure out where you're going to be happiest. I think it's exactly that. And I think that is the question. And in this generation is incredibly social. I mean, when I applied to college, which was a long time ago, and, you know, I expected on day one, my parents helped me move in. I walked around that dorm floor after they left and I knocked on doors and shook hands and introduced myself. This generation, 89% of them expect to have their friends, not just know who their peers and their classmates are going to be, but actually have friends at a school before they get on campus. And so we're facilitating that process and making sure that people feel really connected. And as a result, those students who met in Zeemee and were on Zeemee before they got to a campus, they actually persist at higher rates as well, because they get on campus feeling bonded to the institution and to the people at the institution, both the faculty, you know, staff and the students, their peers. And I think that's a really powerful thing in a world where 25% of students don't return after their first year of school.
Yeah, not only is it social, I mean, things just move at a breakneck pace. It's incredible. I was talking to one of the families I'm working with in Pennsylvania, and the daughter had been saying, Mom, go ahead and put the deposit in. I want you to get this over with. And I wasn't understanding sort of where this urgency was coming from, because they'd already picked the school. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that she wanted to make her big announcement on social media. And so she has her announcement, you know, I'm going to the University of Miami. And this student, actually, my youngest daughter knows the student. So in no time after she announced it, like my daughter Joy's like, that was such a cool announcement, you know, I won't mention it because I didn't get permission, but by the student, you know, and I'm like, how did you know this so fast? They are very socially connected. I can concur.
So socially connected. It is true. Yeah, it's true. And it's beautiful. And I think it's neat that it's expected and it's easy for students to connect with other students across the country. It's really, I think it's one of the best things about this generation is how connected and how skillful they are at navigating all of those relationships.
So Vanessa, I can see Zeemee, how it's morphed a little. And you talked to me about this in the last year, because even a year ago, like my primary understanding of Zeemee was this is an opportunity for a student to take maybe and use pictures or a short video that a college admissions officer could click and get more of a sense of a student without the long interview, which is not always, something that's pragmatic with time constraints. But a college admissions officer, and I've even heard some college admissions officers talk about, for that borderline applicant, they sometimes will like to click the Zeemee video just to get a little bit more of a sense of personality. And my sense was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was almost the primary role of Zeemee in the past. Am I right, or
that is right? Yeah, and that is the origin story, and it still is who we are today as well. So we're sort of both. I mean, the Zeemee was founded with this philosophy, share your story, tell your story. And we still are that. Even the community product is still that in connecting with other students and with those admissions folks. We're opening up more opportunities for students to share their story, to tell who they are. But yes, we still have that piece as well, and have all of those wonderful success stories every year that students are writing us saying that the admissions folks told them that it was really their Zeemee video or their Zeemee portfolio that kind of pushed them over the edge and got them in. And so there's this great story from Stanford where a student created this awesome Zeemee portfolio and got to campus, and somebody from admissions actually just recognized him as he was walking around and said, "Hey, I know you." And he said, "I saw your Zeemee videos." And the student was, taken aback and was like, "Oh my goodness." He said, we all sat around and watched them, and, it had a huge influence in you getting in, but like, I know you. And so that student just felt really connected and obviously proud of what he had put together. And we were so proud to have facilitated that.
On next week's episode, a great article by Michael J. Sorrell, the president of Paul Quinn College. Colleges are deluding themselves. Institutions are letting their financial and reputational worries cloud their judgment about when they can safely reopen. Mark and Anika will discuss, what are my repayment options for federal student loans? Our question from a listener comes from Larissa in Colorado. How much emphasis should I put on average salary data for graduates when evaluating a college? Our interview is part 3 with Vanessa Didyk, the CEO of Zeemee, on how Zeemee introduces students into college communities before they arrive. And our college spotlight is Virginia Tech.
Hey, friends, but our college spotlight today is Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. And this is there's a number of these schools out there. Rose-Hulman is one. Harvey Mudd is another. I like to do this sometimes when I'm traveling around and I'm speaking. I like to say to the group, I say, how many people have ever heard of Rose-Hulman? Or how many people have heard of Harvey Mudd? So few people actually have. And then I list the schools for the highest salaries for the graduates. And I show them that these schools are at the top. And I use that to prove the point. Just because you may not have heard of a school, it doesn't mean it's not any good. It's very effective. And so Rose-Hulman is one of the schools I use as an example for that. So Rose-Hulman is in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I am not going to say Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology every single time I refer to it. So fortunately, thank you, people at this fine institution. They've gave me a nice, convenient name for the school. Any idea what the nickname is, Dave?
Wow, Rosie Tech.
Well, pretty close. Rose. So
Rose.
They made it easy for me. Yeah. So
Okay.
From now on, the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology will be known as Rose because that's what they call it. That's what I'm calling it. And I will just get right to the nub. If you want a place that's got hands-on, project-based learning, lots of toys, state-of-the-arts lab, known for project-based learning, team-based learning, and you want to go to a school that focuses on science, math, and engineering, and undergraduate education, then Rose-Hulman is in any conversation for the top schools in the entire country. And many people would actually say it would be up there with Harvey Mudd, actually in the conversation as the best place that you could possibly go for an undergraduate education that's focused on math, science, and technology. But Rose-Hulman focuses even more on project-based learning, on hands-on learning, on team-based learning. And they get into it right in the freshman year. So there's a lot of schools that will say, we do this great capstone project in the final semester for our students. Or some of them brag about, we have this great capstone project that's the entire year of your senior year. You build a robot or blah, blah, blah. They don't believe in wait to the senior year. They're jumping right into project-based learning, team-based learning, freshman year. So if that's your learning style, and I'm working with a student in Connecticut, and that's how he learns, and he's all about this. I said, you got to have Rose-Hulman on your list, because this is what they're all about. So a few more things. This is a very focused institution. 19 undergraduate majors. That's it. That's not a lot of undergraduate majors. In fact, the list is so short, I'm going to list all 19 for you. So these are their degree programs. Biochemistry, biology, biomathematics, biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, chemistry, civil engineering, computer science, economics, electrical engineering, engineering design, engineering physics, international computer science, math, mechanical engineering, optical engineering, physics, and software engineering. Dave, what was your takeaway after hearing that list?
Those are some heavy-duty majors, man. I was waiting for my favorite underwater basket weaving. I didn't hear it. That's some deep stuff.
It is. And actually, this is a good point, because this school is not for the faint of heart. It is not a slacker school. Like, it is academically rigorous. Put your seatbelt on, because you're going to be working. Yeah. But you're going to be working in a context of a lot of support. This is a school that has an average class size of 20, pretty much almost no classes that really get over 30, almost unparalleled access to teachers. And a culture of support. I would also say there's also a real strong culture of support there as well. Now, interestingly enough, of course, you would expect their grads to, go on and do things in engineering and computer science, and so many of them do. I mean, mechanical engineering is their most popular major. Software engineering, extremely popular. Computer science, extremely popular. But a lot of their grads actually go on to get jobs in business, econ, and finance too. Schools just like the critical thinking skills that they've developed and the problem-solving skills that they've developed in an education that focuses on problem solving. So a little more. Terre Haute is 1.5 hours, from Indianapolis. Just you want to kind of get a sense of where it is.
Which is like 5 hours from Chicago. Yeah.
There you go. You got to get Chicago, your Chi-Town in there.
Yeah, I got to get Chicago, man.
Hey, I hear you, man. I stick up for the ATL, and so I totally get it. Now, there are a lot of outstanding schools around the country that are institutes of technology. And when you hear Institute of Technology, a lot of people first are going to think of an MIT or Georgia Tech. When you hear Institute of Technology, technology is at the heart and focus of the school. And there are a lot of outstanding schools that are really, really good in this area. Something like a WPI in Worcester, Mass, a Stevens in New Jersey. Hey, speaking about Chicago, Dave, you've got a really good one, Illinois Institute of Tech.
Yes, we do.
One of the really strong Institute of Technologies, or an RIT.
And one of the finest examples of Mies van der Rohe architecture.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And an RIT is another fantastic one, Rochester Institute of Technology, RPI, Polytech, Rensselaer Polytech. There's a lot of these really strong Institute of Technologies. One of the things that makes Rose-Hulman different is its almost unilateral, singular focus on the undergraduate student. So I'll give you these stats, and it'll kind of probably put it right in perspective for you. So this is a school with 2,200 undergraduate students, and they have 10 graduate programs as well. So it's not 100% undergraduate. But Dave, take a guess how many graduate students they have that are enrolled in graduate school for those 10 graduate programs. Just take a guess.
Man, okay, 10. I'm going to guess less than 20 per program. So you're probably only talking about a couple hundred max.
Yeah, good guess. It's actually between 70 to 77.
Oh, that's even smaller.
So you're talking about Yeah. So this is an undergraduate school for all intents and purposes. Yeah, they have the high-powered faculty to be able to do the grad school and attract the grad school students. But this is all about the undergrad that attend there. So that's one of the things. But if anyone's into rankings, you look up undergraduate engineering institutions, you're going to find they're going to be way up there, at the top in so many of their fields. What they do extremely well. Now, one thing I like that they do is, and Dave, there's a danger of this. You get all of these tech skills, and so you're incredible. You're a mathematician, you're a computer scientist, you're all of those, those majors I listed that have both of our heads popping. Right. There's some heavy duty stuff in there.
Yeah.
But you can't relate to people. That's a problem. And they go to great lengths to try to avoid that. They have what they call their HSSA requirement, and that stands for Humanities, Social Sciences, and the Arts. And this is a 2-year requirement that you have to take a bunch of courses like economics, English, political science, art, art history, foreign language. They offer Japanese, German, and Spanish, psychology, history. So they make you take these at least minimum of 9 courses over 2 years to make sure that you're well-rounded. That's something they really emphasize. The other thing they emphasize a lot is their global engagement program. This is getting you abroad. And oftentimes they have full year abroad opportunities. Places like Japan and Germany and many others. So, and something that's very popular, this won't surprise you, Engineering Without Borders. That's a huge popular program there that they're involved in. Another thing let me just stop for a sec, Dave, because, I'm getting close to winding down, but I want to hear your first impressions.
Well, first impressions, I'm a huge advocate of institutions that focus primarily on the undergraduate experience. And I know with my daughter's college search, she did a program at Harvey Mudd. She went and toured Pomona. And so I really do know the value of institutions that really focus on the undergrad. You can see it in their graduation statistics. By and large, those type of schools have a much higher rate of kids graduating in 4 years. They have incredible job placement statistics, and I'm not going to be surprised if you tell me that Rose Hulman basically places an inordinate amount of their graduates into high-paying positions, and it just has an esprit de corps and a social experience that most people just really don't appreciate. Is very much unique to undergraduate-focused institutions. So what and then the other thing is, I thought, we talk about the angular student. This almost seems like an angular institution, someone who decided to narrow their focus and do it really, really well. And when you have a combination of angular institutions that focus on the undergrads, I'm not surprised that they have superior results.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What it reminds me of, if you have a student, I work with students like this who they're absolutely passionate about something in the arts, whether it be performing or visual. Well, we have a few options now. We can go to, a liberal arts and science school that's got a really strong visual performing arts program, or a national university that's got a really strong visual performing arts. And the same things with music. We can look at conservatories, or we can go to an art and design school that specializes. Right. And different decisions are right for different people. But the person that this is what they know they want to do, and they had enough experience with it to know they want to do it, it can be a really good option. It really can. And you're surrounded by like-minded people who have similar passions to you. Yeah. Now, another thing I really like about Rose is their career services. They really do a great job with career services. They have 3 huge events every year that bring hundreds of employers there to recruit their students. And obviously we know there's a dearth of people graduating these majors. So it puts their grads in very, very, very high demand. Another thing I love is their focus on internships. And I'll give some stats and you'll get a sense of what they're doing with internships, which is fantastic. So 94% of their students will graduate with an internship. So that's 19 out of 20. Very, very impressive.
Yeah.
But what's even more impressive to me is that 70% of their students will do 2 internships.
Wow.
And 31% will do 3. So, and then they do something else, which I really like, is while they're not a co-op school, they allow the flexibility of a student to convert an internship into a co-op. And by the way, they have a real simple definition of co-op that I kind of like. It's different than the one that I've used, but as I think about it, it's pretty good. And their definition is your work during the summer or is it during the school year? Because if it's during the school year, then it's a co-op to them. That's a little bit of an oversimplification. I've defined co-op before, and I would include all the other factors that I mentioned when I define co-op, but they normally all line up with that. So what happens with them is they're more of an internship school. So they hook you up in the summer for 10 or 12 weeks, and that's when you do your internships. But they have employers that are loving these kids and want them to continue to work on, and they work through their advising system with their scheduling, and they actually encourage that. If your employer needs you another 3 months, we'll flip your internship into a co-op. And quite a few different people do that, giving them more of a 6-month type of experience. So I think that the job placement is a strength of their school, as well as their flexibility at flipping internships to co-ops, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of co-ops.
Yeah, we both are. I mean, I just love them to death,
Besides the savings you can have on college, but that to be able to literally be planning for your after college career by getting real life experience in companies that you will most likely be working with or in the same field is just invaluable.
Yeah, and it's invaluable. And internships are, also helpful for this as well. They're just not as long.
Right.
Really getting to understand yourself, to know yourself, to learn what is it I love and don't love. And they're transparent, by the way, about the compensation. Like these are paid internships, by the way. Let me also say that. These are not unpaid. They get their students paid internships. And they're pretty clear. Normally freshman year, they're in the $12 to $15 range. Mm-hmm. And sophomore year, they're in the $15 to $18 range. And then the junior year, they're up to the $18 to $25 range. And that's good money to be making as a college kid. It beats flipping burgers, you know?
It does. Yes,
so
it does.
as well as getting real life experience. So so they're pretty clear about the compensation structure that you can expect. And because of the demand for their skill set, they're not these are not unpaid internships. These are paid, which are the best ones if you can do it. And so they are sports. They have sports like most every school does. They're not going to be competing, Dave, anytime with the University of Illinois or Purdue. I can tell you that, or Michigan State. I mean, or even Northwestern, so, but they're D3. They're D3 as you would expect. Now, don't sleep on D3. D3 can be really good. Rose Hulman's not necessarily a powerhouse program, but they have a lot of participants. They have actually 20 different sports. And one thing I love is they emphasize keeping their kids active. So over 60% of their students do intramural sports. Yeah. So if you're not playing on the varsity team, of course you can play against, students in one dorm against another or however they're structured in regard to that, keeping healthy. Now, after graduation, students, as you would probably expect, most of them go on to engineering jobs. That's the most common. But other things that are really common are operations, business development, information technology, education, program and project management, and research. Those are like the top areas where their graduates get placed. And the number one thing that their graduates studied at Rose Hulman is number 1, mechanical engineering, number 2, electrical, number 3, chemical, number 4, computer science, 5, civil engineering, 6, computer engineering, and then business administration, and then math, and then computer software, and then bioengineering or biomedical. So those are the big things. Now, Greek life, 35% of the students are involved in Greek life. They only have 3 sororities and 8 fraternities. Now, one thing you'll commonly find with a lot of these science schools is very, very, very common to find that there have at least a 70 to 30 gender split, because we know that engineering and information technology, computer science are heavily male-dominated fields. Rose Hulman is no exception on that. So their gender breakdown is 75% male, 25% female. And that can be a turnoff to a lot of people. But hey, if you're a woman, it's pretty good. 3 guys for every one of you. There's some advantages to that. It can also be an advantage to be a woman in admissions too, by the way, because that's not something they would like to have.
Yeah.
So, so keep that in mind. We talk about institutional priorities. The institutional priority is we need more women. And so that's going to be the kind of thing is if they believe that you can do their program, it's going to be a huge asset to be a woman in their admission process. It sounds like you want to say something, Dave.
Well, yes, I was going to say that gender split works both ways. Mark and I have discussed in the past how many colleges now have an overabundance of women. In fact, I think if you go to UNC, it's a 60-40 split. It's not uncommon for many colleges to have now a 65-70% split of women to men. So if you are a female and you happen to be technologically inclined and you want to go to a place that has a 2-to-1 male-female ratio, well, there's technological institutes and there's the academies, the naval academies and the military academies. And I think you'll have a better social experience, quite frankly, at the technology academies. So it's just an interesting thing that the gender split can actually work both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As far as their application, they have two options. They accept the common application and they have their own Go Rose app. So pretty common for schools to do that. Offer the common app and then their own institutional app, and they're no exception. They make the application process really straightforward. They need your transcript, and they are not test optional and have no plans on going test optional, even in this COVID-19 world. They are going to be requiring test scores for the current class. They only need one recommendation, and they say, we'll leave it up to you. It can be a teacher. It can be a counselor. And they said it doesn't have to even be from STEM. You don't feel you have to send us a STEM rep, but we need a recommendation, teacher or counselor. Now, one thing they are really stickler on, more than most schools, they really want to see biology, chemistry, and physics. So there's been a move more recently that, to not take physics, to take something else in place of physics. Pretty much almost all students are taking biology and chem, but a lot of students are opting not to take physics. Right. And depending on what you're interested in majoring in and depending on where you want to go to school, that can make some sense in certain instances, but it's not going to make sense if you want to apply to Rose Hulman. They need bio, they need chem, they need physics. Pretty much a deal breaker to not have that on your transcript. Believe it or not, and this is surprising for a school with their rigor, they will accept some students that have not had calc. Very rare, but they will. Having pre-calc, of course, is an absolute deal breaker. If you don't have pre-calc, don't apply. But so one of the things I like that they do is they've got this school, it's got this tremendous reputation, and it's got a lot of rigor. And I mentioned all the other strengths, but they can actually accommodate a little bit more of a range of a student than a Georgia Tech or an MIT. And that can make them really attractive. So let's look at test scores. So it's true that their average math score on the ACT is a 31, which is a pretty high score, but 24 is a cutoff, and they're firm about that. If you don't have a 24, you're not getting in. So there's a big difference between a 24 to a 31, and that can allow a lot more students to consider them as a school. And they do the same thing with math. 700 is their average on a math SAT, but they'll go all the way down to 550 for the right school. 550 is pretty much a firm cutoff. They're very clear about it. If you don't have a 550, basically don't apply. Yeah, our average is a 700, but we take kids between 550 and 700. Yeah. Likewise, sure, we like A's, but we're going to take a good, solid A-B student. That's what we want. And they actually have an acceptance rate of 60%. But it's one of these things where, don't be fooled by the acceptance rate. They attract a certain type of self-selective type of student who applies to a school like this. 91.2% of the students return and come back from retention rate. Because so many people do the internships flip to co-ops, and you'll find this with engineering schools, you really don't want to look at the 4-year graduation rate. You want to look more at the 5 or the 6. Usually the 5 is really where you want to look, not so much the 6. So they have a 66.5% 4-year graduation rate, 78.4% 5-year graduation rate. 58% of their students live on campus, and the cost of attendance is $70,400. And it is known, as I mentioned before, as one of the highest paying schools for salaries for their graduates. So their average graduate is coming out making over $73,000 right out the chute at 22.
Cool.
So that's it. Any final thoughts, Dave?
No, I mean, once again, the sticker price is a little high. So I'm going to ask, in terms of financial aid, are they need blind? What type of What can you do? Obviously, they have a co-op program to cut costs, but what type of other merit ways can you get?
Yeah, so they have a lot of merit money, and they do have a lot of merit money. It's very common for students to get merit money. The thing is, with the compensation that people are making, I mean, the average student is coming out, just for people to know, I've never actually shared this. I don't remember sharing this on the podcast.
Yeah.
But the average student, well, I'm going to quiz you, Dave. How much do you think the average college grad makes coming out of college? What do you think?
I'm going to say less than $35,000. Easy. I'd be surprised if it's more.
Well, it's actually 50. It's right at 50.
Okay.
Yeah, right at 50. So when you're coming out at 73, okay, over 4 years, that's already $100,000 more than the average student in the first 4 years right out. So it's pretty easy. It's people can see the ROI there, and of course, that's just starting pay.
Right.
You look at mid-year salaries and everything, you're talking about substantially more money.
Yeah.
But they do have a pretty generous merit-based and pretty generous merit-based and need-based. So I have to give a shout out to somebody that I used to serve on an admissions committee with at Westtown School for 7 years. I was chair of a committee for 5 years, and he was on my team for 5 years. This is Professor Spencer Gates, who was an English teacher, and he was incredible at reading files. He was amazing. And his son went off to Rose-Hulman. And that's where I really first got to learn about Rose-Hulman, because, he's one of these kids who could have gone pretty much to any school he wanted to.
Right.
He turned down the who's who list of schools because he wanted that project-based, hands-on projects right from the time he started freshman year. Right. And he knew that he'd be in real small classes with lots of access to faculty. So when it comes to that, if that's what somebody wants, if you're someone who learns by doing, and you want to get right in and get your hands dirty making toys and doing stuff right away, and with small classes and lots of access to teachers, they can compete with anybody. They can compete with anybody in terms of what they offer. So there's Rose-Hulman, everybody. I know it's a little bit of a niche school. Quick word, Dave, tell us what's going on. You're not in New Jersey after probably 2 months in New Jersey.
No,
give us an update where you are right now, and we'll call it a day.
One of my favorite regions of the country, North Carolina. I'm in Murphy, North Carolina. For those of you who aren't familiar with this part of the country, it's about right smack in the middle between two great cities. One is Asheville, and the other is something dear to Mark's heart, Atlanta. So I have the choice of either flying into Atlanta, one of my favorite airports, or Asheville, which is also a great place. And boy, that drive from Atlanta to North Carolina, coming right up through the mountains, is just simply breathtaking. And I wake up in the morning, and you have the mist just coming off the mountains there, and it makes me want to go to the local Cabela's and buy myself a fishing rod.
Well, listen, Dave's not joking. So this guy, man, this guy pushed Lincoln off the penny, but he actually splurged and spent $250 extra to get a convertible. So he could just drive around and enjoy North Carolina, enjoy the mountains, enjoy the scenery. And so it has to be good. If he's coming out of his pocket $250, that's what he pays for a computer. He paid that for a rent-a-car for a week.
I went into National Rent-A-Car, and there's this pretty little convertible black Ford Mustang GTO. I said, you know what? Black cars matter. I'm taking that one. And I drove the top down all the way here. It's great, So, sometimes you just have to spend a little more for life special benefits. And so booting through the mountains in a convertible through North Carolina by a mountain stream has to rank of one of my great experiences. So God is good.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. Awesome. Dave knows this. I'm working on converting him to move down south. He's so ensconced and entrenched in Chicago. It's hard to pry him away from that place. Well, I'm working on it. Every time he gets a Southern experience, he's like, I see why people live here.
Well, God blessed me with a wonderful, wonderful woman for a wife. But go figure that a woman with Louisiana roots has a cold weather tendency. I tried 5 years to
Yeah,
get her
Dave's
to
in
come down
trouble.
to Miami, and she does not like the hot weather. Go figure.
Yeah, Dave's like, Chicago, this place is getting expensive, man. Maybe we need to move. So he says to his wife, how about we move somewhere, we get so much more for our money? And she's like, if we move, it's New York or San Francisco.
That's right.
Dave's like, okay.
I was like, where would you?
All right, no way. I'm not paying for that mortgage.
Where do you want to retire, honey? How about the Upper East Side? Okay.
Awesome. All right, Dave. Enjoy the rest of your week, my friend. I know we'll talk probably later today.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. Your College Bound Kid is produced by Dave Vasaya of podcastengineers.com. If you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that can really use this information. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Our image editor is Tauha Khan. Webmaster is Stalianos Dimitru. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. And if you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340. And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like to ask us, and we'll include them on the show, you can just email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions. So send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.